Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Tatro Talks. Thank you for joining us today. Sorry we can't be with you live today, but nonetheless, we have a really amazing guest. I think you're really going to dig today's interview. Before we get too deep into it, I want to remind everybody we are here every Tuesday, usually live, and sometimes we do call-in shows where you all, the community, are the guests of the show, but then other times we have really amazing guests, artists, people that work in the music industry, people that make really cool gear, people from all over the music industry. So make sure you're subscribed to the 343 Labs YouTube channel with notifications turned on so you don't miss a future live stream, because in addition to Taser Talks, we have a bunch of other cool shows where people get into the music making process as well. And I should also say that 343 Labs also has pro sessions, which are these amazing like weekend deep dives with an artist, where you get a look into their process, you get really hands-on, you get to interact with the artist. It's a really cool experience. And coming up this weekend, we have none other than the artist Evan Giia, who also happens to be our guest today. Evan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So you've got a pro session coming up this weekend. Some people are already signed up and very excited, but I'm sure the people who maybe are familiar with work would love to hear, like, in this electronic music world, how do you define yourself as an artist?
Sure. So it's been, a really informative past 4.5 years since starting my project. I feel like I'm kind of just hitting my stride and coming into my own, finding my sound, understanding what my branding is, and really who I am as an artist. And when I really zoom out and think about what Evan Gia is, Evan Gia to me as a project is creating, I call them pretty bangers. So they have,
I love that. I saw that in your Instagram bio, and I think that's like an epic thing. That's epic
it's
branding.
like I grew up singing classical music. So I have, songs that are able to have these verses that are pretty and add in a little bit more of my classical tone. But the backbone of all my music has banging 808s, and it's truly electronic, which is my, taste in music. So on addition to that, I feel like the energy and emotion that I'm trying to bring is just positivity and motivation and inspiration.
I
So
love that. That's amazing. You just touched on something really cool, which is your classical background. And I think a lot of people, like entering into music, a lot of people either enter through, standard classical lessons, or, they take piano lessons, whatever it may be. But
right.
do you want to tell us a little bit about your path from classical world and how that brought you to the electronic world?
Yeah, sure. So my first introduction to music really was through taking classical voice lessons. So every, week after school and also on the weekends, I was competing in the greater Boston area, singing opera. So
Oh, are you from
cool.
Boston
I'm from
originally?
Boston.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I'm from Massachusetts as well.
Oh, no way. I'm from Hingham on the South Shore.
Oh, that's dope. I'm from like southeastern Mass near like Taunton and Fall River and all that stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, drive by it all the time.
that's funny.
Um, yeah, so I started with that. I graduated high school and did a lot of, musicals and choirs, all the rest that normally people do if they're singers. And
Right.
then actually got into Berklee College of Music. And from there, I started to kind of move into the contemporary route of things. I love classical, but I just didn't see myself. I wanted to sing things that were like on the radio.
Totally. For me, like I went to a state school. I actually went to UMass, and I was a music major, but I was always having trouble reconciling with the stuff I was studying versus the stuff I was listening to and wanting to make. Did you have that same kind of like conflict and struggle?
That you said it, hit the nail on the head. That's perfect. I kind of like, I wasn't coming home and listening to Bach, so I was like, okay, I think I need to, broaden my horizons here and start singing some things. And it was tough, to be honest with you, to switch my tone of my voice
Totally.
to this more contemporary route. So it took many years. And I think even now, the past 2 years, I've finally fully honed in how I want to sound, because I keep that as a backbone of technique for me. My breathing's there. I have stamina on stage. I know how my body should be. I really respect my instrument, but I'm able to make it, I call it, add the swag, a little bit of coolness to it. So
Absolutely. And like The classical side of things, like you just mentioned, like knowing your instrument and like having that foundation to now do this contemporary thing on is probably really solid. But how did you what did you do to go about learning some of those more contemporary things, like the thing you just described? I didn't even know, like are you just watching other artists do it? Are you collaborating with people?
A
Have you?
lot of imitation and a
Yeah,
lot of, a lot of my inspiration for songs comes from other songs. I'm sure most people say that. I
totally.
hear one and I go, holy shit, oh my God, I
I
wish I
wish
wrote
I
that.
wrote that. Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm like, okay, well, I have to get to work. And I would just listen over and over again. And when I actually record here at my apartment, I play takes, I get a lot of inspiration tone wise from rappers, for example. Like I would literally play a Drake line and try to manipulate that in my voice, but in my
Amazing.
own way, which is cool because you never like, I love imitation and using references because you're never going to, it's my voice, right? Like I'm
Right.
never going to sound like Drake. So it's this like, you end up coming up with something totally your own. So
That's really
yeah.
cool. And like in terms of songwriting, production, like how are you spending most of your time?
Yeah, I would say it varies because I'm either on tour or I'm at home writing an EP or I'm in kind of business mode. I got a music business degree at Berkeley, so I'm, not many people talk about the business side of
Totally.
being an artist, but there's so much that goes into releasing a song and getting, features on your song to figuring out what the contracts are and all that. So I'd probably spend like, 40% of my time doing all of like keeping my business in check and making money and doing the things I need to do. And
Right.
then the rest is all between sitting upstairs with my producers Memba and making the songs and being on the road and touring.
Wow, that's awesome. How, because you mentioned the music business side, like how has that kind of driven you forward and how do you think that's benefited you as an artist having that background?
I think tremendously. So many people try to go for it and try to make it. And I feel extremely grateful that I'm even able to kind of pop into the caliber that I'm at right now. I just feel like it's really tough and it requires like a little bit of luck, but a ton of hard work. And I think even from the get-go, I was able to understand through my music business background, I just knew a lot of things. I knew not to kind of get screwed. I knew what I was owed. I knew what the standards were. And then it also just helps on being a businesswoman, which I think not many people think about when they're an artist, but I think that's kind of my biggest strong suit. I can run a meeting. I can, I'm at the forefront of my entire business. So people are coming to me from the label. I can, talk with my managers directly. And I think those type of skills are so invaluable. I think there's a lot of artists out there that don't, they just write all day and like
Right.
don't worry about any of that stuff, which works for them as well. But I think for me specifically, it's been awesome to be able to be like savvy in that way.
For sure. I wonder, a lot of artists consider themselves introverts, like, and that kind of contributes to that. I'm just going to sit in the studio and write songs
Yes.
and make music. Do you consider how do you consider yourself? Extroverted, introverted? Like, did you have to like learn these skills? Is something you had to become more comfortable with?
Definitely not. I think I'm definitely someone that feels a bit of an outcast in the artist world because I'm not an introvert
Right.
and I work with mainly DJs and producers who, are guys that, sit in their room all day and do this and they don't really
Exactly.
love to be out there in the forefront of things. And I'm the opposite. I love it. I thrive off of it. And I like being a leader and I'm very, forward speaking and right in the action. So
That's amazing. I'm sure it's served you so well for sure. You mentioned like touring and playing shows, and I wonder because I feel like a lot of people that want to be pop artists, getting your start like playing out and playing shows in the pop, more electronic world as a songwriter and a singer, it can be a little more difficult because there's a scene for bands, there's a scene for like the singer songwriter, like I'm gonna play acoustic guitar and sing. There's scenes for that. I wonder like what was your experience? How did you get started playing out live in these pretty bangers, like how did you like what's the scene for that? I just am not aware.
I mean, it's so like first off, you have awesome questions. I really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Like you really get it. So It's a great question because it's so true. It's just, I think when I first came into it, there was really not another female vocalist that's singing on these big tracks. They're either DJs that are going out, or
Right.
like you said, a girl that's doing something with an acoustic guitar. And I'm just coming up there with like fully just 808s behind me and like singing over it. So it was new for a lot of people. But I got really lucky because my first song, Westworld, got released on ODEZA's label Foreign Family. And because they really took a liking to my project, they had a massive arena tour coming up, and they're like, do you want to come play first of three? So my literal first experience was
That's huge.
First of three in an arena tour, which is like, 12,000 people or more. And I was, talk about just had to like fake it till you make it. I just showed up with one suitcase and a microphone and just got up. And I had performed kind of my whole life, but not in this setting. And I kind of just let myself go wild, and it started to form into something that people were like, oh, okay, like I get it. And I want to create this world where it's Evan Giia, you come, it's almost like a DJ show.
For sure.
That type of hype. That's the type of energy that my shows are. So we slowly started to form this community around the ODEZA people. I toured with Big Wild and then Jai Wolf. And it actually ended up being an awesome thing for all these guys because it was this support that brings the hype, but it's not just another DJ.
Exactly. It brings that live performance side to the electronic show. Yeah.
Right.
That's amazing. I wonder, you called it luck. I'm sure it's not luck. I know a lot of things come down to like circumstances and opportunities, but can you trace back, like, how did that opportunity even come to be? Because I'm sure lots of people out there watching this interview are looking like, wow, if I could have a big break like that, that'd be amazing. So how did that even come about?
It's crazy. I feel grateful for that little moment all the time because it, moments build off of each other, and I am where I am because of it. So, we still are not totally sure on how the song got to them, but the little background on it was ODEZA was I'm not exaggerating, like my favorite artist, maybe like of all time at the time. I had been to maybe 12 shows of theirs. I would try to like nudge to the front row and like touch them. I was like that obsessed.
You were a super fan.
Super fan. I knew every single song front to back, and you can't even really know them because I'm basically singing the production lines. You know what I mean? There's like no lyrics, but I'm like, like loving every part of it. So it was even more of a crazy full circle moment for them so what happened was Clay, who's one half of ODEZA, texted me out of nowhere. It was like, hey, my name's Clay. I'm part of ODEZA, and I just heard your song Westworld, and I was wondering, we really love it, and I was just wondering if you'd be interested in us introducing it on our label. And I threw my phone across the room.
Do you like, who is this? This is a prank call.
This is a total prank.
Yeah.
And he was so nice. He sent me a whole paragraph. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then from there, they had said that it kind of circulated on a SoundCloud link for a while, kind of around, and it landed on their lap, like backstage at a festival, I think.
What kind of visibility did the track have before that? Like you said, like SoundCloud link, like it was just like another song on SoundCloud.
Another song on SoundCloud. I did have a few people who were working, you couldn't really call them managers, but they're kind of the people that glom onto you and are like, hey, I can help you slightly. And I didn't know what they were at the time. They were kind of spreading feelers. And it ended up on their lap. And I actually have to ask them, like, how did you actually get the song? Because this question comes up all the time.
For sure. Yeah. Everybody's looking for that moment. I guess what it comes down to is just like having your music out there and just.
It's honestly just right place, right time.
Right.
But then the song has to be good enough for them to be like, okay, like this works.
This is the one.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you go and do that tour. And then I was looking at your Spotify and you have tracks, one track nearing 22 million plays and then tracks in the millions of plays. Like, how has streaming and discoverability that way, how has that sort of affected your career? Have you seen an impact from that?
For sure. I think, Westworld's my baby and that's my carrier. It
Yeah.
gets me a majority of my
Traffic.
just fans and
Yeah.
traffic. And people are constantly still today, even though I released it almost like 4 years ago, just tagging me on DMs being like, I just found this song. I'm obsessed with it. So I
That's
think
amazing.
everybody needs their one slow burner song, which is what we call it. And it just keeps bringing people to me. So I'm super lucky with that. And then the rest, I've found strategic ways to work with other producers, do features on tracks. Like my feature with Gorgon City brought a lot of people to my page.
Right.
And so I'm constantly with me and my label working on how we can bring more visibility there. And it does help, but I would say that touring is the number one way for all of a sudden people to start following me both on Spotify and Instagram.
Right.
Because I think I get probably 100 followers a night. Like my goal when I go out on stage is to like have these eye-to-eye connections with at least 15 people and make them be kind of so mesmerized that they're like, I gotta follow this girl. I don't know who she is, but like I think I need to be a part of her journey.
I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. That eye-to-eye connection, as somebody who makes content is behind a camera most of the time, but I still love going to shows and I love seeing my favorite bands or whatever play live. That's an amazing thing for sure. Be out on stage and making eye contact with the artists and
I've also been, the roles were so reversed for me. I was a huge concert goer, like everyone, like Nero, Deadmau5, Disclosure. Like I was front row, the girl that like people were probably annoyed with. And then to have it switch on me halfway through my life is so weird, but it gave me so much perspective because now I'm like, I'm going to give this person, I know exactly how they're feeling in this moment. So I'm going to reach out and touch them. And then they're like, oh my God,
you make their night. Yeah. That's awesome. I can tell just by your energy that you like really, really love touring. So I wonder what has the past year been like for you being able to, or not being able to have been on tour and make that connection with fans.
Yeah, I mean, it was really rough at the beginning. I was in the first two shows of my first headline tour. So everything I've talked to you about before was supporting. So I supported for 3 years, which is other people's shows. I'm playing while people are getting a drink and just arriving.
Sure.
Which I was fine with, but I was so excited to have like the lights dim and like I'm the main event.
Yeah.
First time with lighting behind me and a sound guy. So we worked for a year on the show. And then of course we got through San Francisco and LA and I was flying to Seattle. I landed in the airport and they said, get back on a plane. Don't even get out of the gate. Just go. Cause it was actually happening mainly in Seattle at the time. COVID.
Oh yeah.
So pretty big low blow, to be honest. Cause I did feel like I was at this kind of a bit of a pinnacle or a turning point in my career. So I was low for a while, but I'm really grateful coming out on the other side because I actually spent a lot on my personal life. And I think everybody kind of finds their silver linings with COVID, but I got a therapist. I really worked hard on like, me. I am getting married in August.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so we did a lot of like, I don't know, being with each other and working through things and getting ready for marriage, which is a huge commitment. So I think I flipped the script halfway through. I was sad for a while, don't get me wrong, and totally pity partying. But then I was like, Emmy, come on. You always want to be home. When I'm touring, I want to be home. Like the grass is always greener.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're here now, soak it in, work on the things you could never work on, self-care. And now we're back and I'm finally just have, the summer's totally booked with Luce the Child. And then I have my headline rebooked. So
that's amazing. That's awesome. I wonder, because you mentioned a couple things about like mental health, anything that you're sort of taking with you as an artist now that the world is opening back up and you'll be going back on tour, like are there things you realized during this time and focusing on mental health that you were maybe neglecting previously? I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear like an artist's attempt at mental health and being healthy that way.
Definitely. I think like as much as I love touring for that 45 minutes that I'm on the stage, the rest of it's really lonely and really tiring. And I'm a homebody. I like routine.
Sure.
I, try to eat healthy. I work out. And those are things that just fall by the wayside when you're on the road. So it's so important to keep it like kind of on the forefront of your mind as an artist. And I love talking about it. But one of the things that I found that's really useful for me is not just journaling, because I think sometimes journaling can become somewhat of a chore, at least to me.
Right.
I can think faster than I'm writing. So sometimes I'm like, oh my God, this is just, it's almost like another thing to check off your list. And that's one of the big things for me is like, I thought of self-care as another check off the list. It's
Another
like,
obligation.
go meditate. That's your obligation. And then
Yeah.
you'll feel better. But the minute you flip the script on that and you're like, I mean, now you're just adding it to a list of stressors. Like
Yep.
I've really found ways to be like, okay, what's self-care for me today? Is that sitting on the couch and watching the Kardashians? Like, great,
Yeah.
you know? So that's one of them. And the other thing is using the voice notes app and speaking out loud for however long I want, outwardly saying my fears, like, because a lot of my issues are rumination on things to come that haven't happened yet.
Getting ahead of yourself.
I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm like, I'm worried about having a baby and going on tour, and that could be 5 years from now or never happen. I don't know. But get it out. And I like to talk, as you can tell. So it's been helpful as a voice note journal.
That's awesome. I think I've never heard it articulated that way, of like the writing is too slow, but I think that is my issue with journaling as well. It's like I'm thinking too fast, and writing it down is just like arduous. Yeah, that's crazy. That's really cool. I mentioned this at the top, but you have a pro session coming up this weekend.
Yes.
And I'm curious if you want to give us a little preview without giving it all away. Talk a little bit about what you're going to get into over the weekend and what people can expect from that.
I'm really excited because I think I've seen a lot of the people that you guys have done in the past, and I think I'll have a bit of a fresh take on things coming in as a vocalist. And I have so much advice to pass on. So this is coming at a perfect time because I really felt like I was in a place in my life where I'm like, I really have a lot of this starting to click and have figured out. And I would love to be able to just let people know how it happened for me and what works best for me. So A, I'm very excited. B, I thought a lot about my manual, my teaching manual. This is how seriously I'm taking this. And I would say the first half is all about my writing process. So I write pretty much the same way every time. So I'm going to kind of take everyone step by step on how I get from when a producer sends me a song and they come as even 15-second little demos, a little chord loop, whatever it is, all the way until we're about to release it on my label. So I just want to give the full life cycle of how that works. I want to touch base on how I'm honing in on my tone and how I record and how I get the timbre of my voice to be in certain ways. And then the mumble process, which for me is just, that's how I write. Everything starts as and then I'm like, oh, okay, that's a word. So walking through that. And then I'm going to bring in elements of little things we've talked about here, how to run your business, how to tour correctly, and also how I got to where I was. So all of those little things and my tips looking back, being like, okay, I wish I could have told someone that. So now I'm finally able to.
That's fantastic. Before we close out this interview, I know the audience loves hearing about gear and DAWs and plugins and whatnot. So what is your go-to setup right now in your spot? What mic are you using? What DAW are you using? What are your go-to vocal processing plugins? What do you got going there?
Yeah, sure. So I work off of Ableton. I record myself off that, and we do Memba is the producer duo that produces mainly my stuff. They're basically my hub of my writing camp. They work off of Ableton as well. And I sing on a Manley mic. I love it.
I've not heard of that brand.
Manley, yeah, it's really great. Manley. A lot of people in LA sessions had it, and I was like, I should try this out. And then I do soft takes on the mic you're using here, the Shure, because it's easily handheld and I'm able to kind of just, freestyle. I'm really bummed because my Apogee Duet, which is my sound card, just died and they're not making more of them.
Oh my gosh, really?
I found the interface. I'm not a tech head. I'm not good at this type of stuff. So I like very clean interface, and it was super easy.
Yeah.
So I got to move on. I'm going to probably switch to the Apollo. And then as far as effects on my voice and stuff like that. We do a ton of like CLA, which is just,
Totally.
pretty standard, but my producers have found a really good dial in for that works for me. And my voice is really sibilant. So we've had to kind of adjust our whole rig around my mouth, basically.
Really interesting.
Which is interesting.
Nice.
So sorry, I have a
It's
little
okay.
thing going off.
That's fine. All right, but that's perfect timing anyway. That's awesome. I'm excited for this pro session coming up because, like you said, it is pretty different from some of our previous pro sessions, and it sounds like you have even more insight to share on the business side of things and your whole journey, which is super inspiring. And I think people should definitely check it out. And if you haven't yet, link is in the description for the pro session upcoming this weekend. You can also get a discount with the link down below in the description. So check that out for sure. Evan, Giia, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was a really good time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you. And yeah, come check out the session. I'd love to meet you all and have an awesome conversation.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all for watching this episode of Tatro Talks. We'll see you again next week. Bye.